Welcome, everyone, to our second season of Let's Talk About Florida. We're happy to see you all today. Hope you enjoyed this book as much as we all did, Oranges. I'd like to take a moment at the very start to introduce our new executive director, Crystal Diff, and she's going to prepare us for the Zoom meeting with some instruction. Crystal?
Hi, everyone. If I haven't met you already, I'm very pleased to be working here. I've been here for about a month and a half now, so I'm still learning everybody's faces and names. I just wanted to go over a little bit of housekeeping before we begin. I was very surprised how well everybody can use Zoom on our last meeting, so I just wanted to go over a few things. If you put your mouse down towards the bottom of your Zoom screen, a bar will come up, and there's one of them, it's called Reactions. Now, when you click on Reactions, there's a little icons that are on there. There's one called Raise Hand. When you raise your hand, when you have a question in the discussion, then I'll unmute you all one at a time in turn. That way we just have, one person talking at a time, but I will make sure that everybody is able to speak. We also have the chat. If the chat isn't automatically showing up for you right now, what you can do is, again, hover your mouse towards the bottom of your Zoom screen, and there's a button called Chat. Just click on that. And through there, you can type in questions to us, but please feel free to talk to us through your microphone. And also, I have some questions that are listed there. I also emailed those out. So those are some of the questions just to help prompt us to keep the discussion going, but you can feel free to comment on whatever you wanted to with the book itself. All right, and that's pretty much it. If you have any questions for me before we begin, just please let me know. Or if you're having any trouble, again, you can use that chat icon or raise your hand. Oh, and Jerilyn's here.
Great. Okay, so let's get started. First, I would like to acknowledge our donor, Ferguson Skipper Law Firm of Sarasota. They're our very generous sponsor this year. So we hope at some point they'll join us in our book discussion because they too love to read about Florida. And at this moment, I introduce myself, Pat Agles, Jerilyn Bensard, who is our moderator along with me, and Whitney Ransome. So we're ready to start. We usually begin our book discussion with a bio sketch of the author, and then we move right into the book summary and then the questions. So, John McFee, a fledgling staff writer for the New Yorker, wondered why the fresh squeezed orange juice at his favorite juice stand at Penn Station changed color and lost tartness over the winter months. This was 1965. McFee needed to do a story for the New Yorker, so he traveled that spring to Central Florida, source of his stand's fruit. He planned a short article to answer his few questions about oranges. But in Florida, McFee became fascinated with the history, the culture, and the economy of citrus. The sight of Valencia orange trees bearing fruit while in bloom struck him as a botanical wonder. He liked citrus people too. They were friendly, they were helpful, and they seemed the kind of characters who could help sustain a longer peace. McFee kept postponing his departure. He made time for more interviews and arranged to visit more groves. He borrowed more citrus books and articles. He took over the spare desk at the citrus experiment station in Lake Alfred. The short trip became a long trip. He stayed 4 weeks. The short article eventually became a long article, so long that the New Yorker ran it in 2 issues, in installments of 39 and 55 pages. Finally, in 1967, the long article became a short book, Oranges. Here was a lucid, concise, amusing, factual story about fruit. This was the fruit that, with sunshine and alligators, symbolized our state, Florida. The uncrowded shelf of essential Florida books became more crowded. It's a word of mouth book, says a bookseller in Winter Park. New Floridians hear about it from older Floridians. They say, "You haven't read Oranges? Well, you must." No single individual dominates this piece. McFee sketches various characters, but facts dominate. Facts about history, science, and the economy of the oranges. He fits his few characters and many facts into an unconventional structure that is difficult to describe, but easy to judge. It works. All the while, he maintains high standards of accuracy, precision, and clarity in his prose. Some of the citrus people still around praise McFee for making their life's work interesting to others. They say, he got the facts right. John McFee is considered one of the pioneers of creative nonfiction. He won the Pulitzer Prize in category of general nonfiction in '99 for Annals of the Former World. Since '74, McFee has been the Ferris Professor of Journalism at Princeton. Having taught many generations of aspiring undergrad writers, he taught online for the first time during the pandemic last year to a select group of 16 students. He is still at 90 years old, teaching his writing seminar every year in the spring semester. He has lived most of his life in Princeton, New Jersey, and he is the father of 4 daughters. His writing career began at Time magazine and led to his long association with the magazine, The New Yorker, until present time. I found the man fascinating. Well, he would have to be to write such a book. But anyway, I now hand this over to Jerilyn.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, Jerilyn.
Great. Okay, wonderful. I'm going to give a brief synopsis of the book Oranges. It doesn't encompass the whole book, but it gives you a little bit of what was going on. This book I found was a treasure. I think it was so beautifully written, historically accurate, and with anecdotes that just captivated you from the beginning to the end. I'm going to read a brief paragraph from page 6 of the book. You can follow along if you like. It traces the origin of the orange. Parenthesis. The first known reference to oranges occurs in China about 500 BC. The main course of the migration of the fruit from its origins near the South China Sea down into the Malay archipelago, then on 4,000 miles of ocean current to the east coast of Africa, across the desert by caravan and into the Mediterranean basin, then over the Atlantic to the American continents, closely and sometimes exactly kept pace with the major journeys of civilization. Therefore, there were no oranges in the Western Hemisphere before Columbus himself introduced them. And that's from the book. And it does tell you how the orange just traveled across the world. So we see that oranges are not native to the US. Within the orange family, there are many varieties, traceable to their earlier harvesting countries. These distinct tastes and textures of the orange are due to the climate in that particular area. The growing regions of the US also produce differences, right down to the naming of the land. In Florida, we refer to oranges growing in a grove. In California, they're called an orchard of orange trees. Oranges were once the most consumed fruit in the US, more than any other fruits combined. It lost that position actually by dropping 75% when 3 scientists in the late 1940s developed frozen concentrate. People loved the ease of the concentrate, plus the taste was always consistent, thanks to the controls in preparation and also in its packing. Within Florida, there are several large citrus producing areas. One, the Ridge, so called as it is often referred to as the Florida Divide. It is the peninsular watershed in the state. It has the most intense concentration of citrus in the world. Another is Indian River. It is a huge producing area also. And an interesting fact about Indian River is that it's not actually a river, but a tidal lagoon. There are many other large areas trickling down to the small family-owned acres of groves in Florida. John McFee also wrote about the orange research that's going on in Florida. It's ongoing. The University of Florida maintains a citrus experiment station. The US government has horticultural stations. The citrus scientific community in Florida is large, with many renowned scientists. John McFee also describes the early growers, the grove workers, the packers, the pickers, the men referred to as the Orange Barons. These Orange Barons accumulated great wealth and large swaths of land in Florida. Their profiles are very engaging if you choose to read about them. Also, he talked about Florida's history in regard to the orange. From the early English and Spanish sovereignties, the Great Freeze of 1835, the effects of the Civil War, right up to the origins of the Minute Maid brand of orange juice, which was later acquired by Coca-Cola. Also in the book, John McFee talks about oranges as referenced through world history, in paintings and tapestries, thinking of Louis XIV, as symbols of love, used in 14th century cosmetics, antidotes to poison, plague prevention, nautical scurvy cure, as a cleaning product, and of course today, as we all salute vitamin C and its healthful benefits. I would say if you haven't read Oranges yet, read it. The many facts, large and small, sweet and tart, expand our knowledge of civilization's progression. And I will also say that they are great conversation starters at any kind of a cocktail party or Zoom session. Since reading this book, I have talked to friends here in Colorado about it. One friend had read it back when it was in the New Yorker, and it has actually taken over some of our discussions, which started out as other. Thank you.
Thanks, Jerilyn. Whitney, would you like to get us started with some discussion points?
Well, before I get us started, I have to give a shout out to Pam Heilman, who has a very nice looking glass of orange juice that she's been sipping away at, which I'm really impressed. I won't ask her whether it's a concentrate or it was squeezed, but I was impressed. And ironically, Jerilyn talked about how oranges and also actually lemons and other fruits have found their ways into lots of our food. Ironically, I picked up this book, Meyer Lemon Cookie Wafers. And if you look at any shop, you're going to, and I'm sorry we're not in person because I had 2 boxes that I was going to share. Anyway, whenever we get back in person. One of the things that I thought would get us started is if you could, some of you will share 1 or 2 facts about oranges, the citrus industry you didn't know before the book. And I think if you raise your hand that Crystal will turn your mic on, or Crystal, is that right? So anyone
Yes.
want to take a stab at that? Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I noticed that if you plant a orange seed, which is kind of interesting, you plant an orange seed, you may get a lemon tree
Yeah.
or you may get a grapefruit tree.
That was such a surprise.
Yeah.
Any other unknown facts?
I noticed that at one point, I think it was 59, that Minute Maid reclaimed, as they call it, reclaimed marshland, 7,000 acres. And they planted 600,000 orange trees on it. So they wouldn't do that today.
No.
All right.
Yeah, part of that too, and then somebody just interrupted me, so I'm trying to get my train of thought back here. I think one of the things I found most fascinating, because as we all know, what we all do with oranges, unless anyone here wants to tell us they've used them to clean floors or whatever, is eat them. And the fact that going back 500 BC, et cetera, early people apparently didn't eat them, which I just found fascinating, and used them as decorations and used other properties. And obviously we've all seen oranges depicted in paintings and so forth, lovely. But it was fascinating to me that people didn't eat them. So that was my big surprise.
Well, I just wanted to share a couple of things. We use the orange for decoration during holiday time at our house. So we celebrate St. Nicholas Day or Wooden Shoe Day. So outside our door on December 6th, we always have 3 oranges representing the bags of gold that St. Nick threw to the young bride to be who had no dowry. So we use the oranges, and sometimes we clove them. And then after St. Nick Day, we can roll this in a special recipe of spices and orris root, and it makes a beautiful pomander, which will refresh your closet or your drawer for really a year or more. So, and also in Colonial Williamsburg, and if any of you have been there during holiday time, you know that the oranges, pineapple and apples are used profusely on over the door, centerpieces, almost everywhere that you can decorate, along with the Christmas tree. They have the beautiful fruit of the orange. So it is really a beautiful fruit to decorate with, as a matter of fact. Anyone else have uses for the orange beside drinking? Okay, well, I do. I'm gonna go on with this because I love talking about it. This is orange blossom water. And since I love to bake, like my friend Rosemary, I put a splash of orange blossom water and a lot of Middle Eastern delicacies. This is distilled water over bitter orange blossom. And not only do I bake with it, but I also use it as a cologne. Different, but French. So there.
Karen?
Interested in Ben Griffin. So I went and
Yeah.
did a little more research on him and found out some sundry facts that I thought were interesting, like the fact that his granddaughter is Catherine Harris. If you remember her, she was
Yeah,
the
certainly
Secretary
do.
of State of Florida at the time of the Bush contest over the election.
Oh, yeah.
Or the election in Florida. And his company is Alico, which I thought, is a fairly prominent company in Florida as well. And even though he accumulated a huge amount of acreage in Florida, both in terms of groves and also in terms of ranch land in Florida. So he, before he died, he was one of the Forbes richest men in the United States.
I just wanted to ask, I missed, Karen, I missed who you said, what was the name of the family?
Griffin, his name, he's one of the orange, he's the orange baron who's talked about at the end of the book. But those were just, you can Google him and then you get just as simple as reading on Wikipedia. And I just learned other facts about him that I did, thought, wow, they really are a prominent Florida family.
Yeah, still. And there's a major road in Fort Myers, of course, the Ben Hill Griffin roadway.
Yes, you said that. And the stadium at the University of Florida is named.
Oh,
for
yeah.
him.
Yeah. Thanks. Good point.
Factoids that really fascinated me. One, that lightning kills more orange trees than disease. That I could now that may be different now that they're suffering from the greening disease, which is wiping out groves everywhere. But that, I thought, lightning, and that's interesting. Maybe because they're all out there in a huge field and there's nothing to distract it. The other thing was, I didn't realize you can major in citrus at the University of Florida. And I thought, wow, that would have been an interesting thing to pursue. And then another one, and then I hope to hear from some of the rest of you, that the average yield on an average orange tree is 1,500 oranges. And I can't even imagine a tree holding that many oranges, but those were three of my favorite facts. Okay. Another question. I'm wondering, did any of you look up the word pomologist? I may be pronouncing it wrong. It was my second question. What's a pomologist? Pomologist? I think it's someone who studies oranges. I looked it up and then I forgot to write the answer down, but I thought that was interesting. Robert,
Did
do you
you
want to say something?
Here, you can unmute if you have any comments.
All right, can you hear me?
Rob.
Speak a little louder.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, that's someone who cultivates the soil, studies the soil and the fertilizer and determines what is best for the tree to grow. Was I
That's
took that out of it?
That's the pomologist.
Yes.
Good to know. What do you know, any of you know, about the greening effect on oranges and what's being done about it? It wasn't mentioned, I don't think, in the book because it's a recent phenomenon, but what can any of you share about the greening effect and how it's really devastating the orange industry?
Is it a disease?
Mm-hmm. And interestingly enough, they're trying to graft trees. There's all kinds of experiments to try and create a strain of trees that is resistant to the greening effect. But it has had a huge has taken a huge toll on the orange industry in general.
It has, and this year, 22-23 coming up, we will have the smallest yield of oranges since the 1940s due to the greening disease. And
We have another.
State money is being used right now for research for the removal of the diseased trees and the planting of new trees without disease. So, the citrus tree produces 8.9 billion annual revenue to the state. So it's a significant revenue producer, as you might well know. I would say citrus and cattle are our two biggest crops, right?
Yeah, I think,
It's not a crop, but go ahead,
Yeah.
Pat.
Yeah, it's not.
I think this raises a couple things, and I'm not an expert, so I hope if somebody is and really understands this far better, that they will speak up, because it obviously has had this horrendous impact on Florida. The disease is very old. And Woody and I were lucky enough to spend time, and I've been trying to bring up from my brain the name of the company. We sat with the president over on the Ridge, one of the largest orange juice producing companies, who gave us several years ago now an amazing primer. But the disease was not new. It goes back maybe like red tide, back a long, long time, but had not come to the United States until more recent years. I think it came in through the port of Florida. And when it first came, unfortunately, people didn't take it seriously and did not go after it right away. And now they are trying, all different things. The disease, the tree will produce oranges when the disease starts for some time, but over time, the tree weakens and weakens. And so those 1,500 oranges per tree get far less. The quality of the orange declines, and eventually the tree dies. And once it starts, as I recall, it's not reversible. So they were actually spending a lot of money growing new orange trees up north somewhere, like Ontario or Pennsylvania, or wherever it was, as far away as they could get from the disease, and then bringing those little seedling trees. And of course, this is very expensive. Seedling trees down to Florida, as Pat said, removing any of the diseased trees and planting these. They've tried all kinds of chemicals, as was correctly said. The University of Florida and others are spending a huge amount on research dollars trying to figure this out. And now the cost of producing the orange and orange juice, and I did used to know what that was, but I mean, it's magnified many fold from when we were all growing up, and orange juice was probably a staple on our breakfast table, concentrated or otherwise. And over time, the cost of a glass of orange juice has just gone up. And this is serious for Florida. It was always fascinating to me that if you look at our political structure, the three most powerful government leaders in Florida, you have the governor, the Secretary of State, and the Secretary of Agriculture. I don't know if there's any other state, and there may be, but I certainly had never seen that, where the Secretary of Agriculture was part of that power triumvirate. And that's because, as Pat was saying, just the size of the citrus, not just oranges, of course, grapefruit, and the cattle, years ago, the cattle industry coming back now as well. So Florida is an agricultural state, citrus just being a major, major part of it. And yet, as Pat just said, even this coming year's crop is down a huge amount. And I think the man we were talking to, Woody, at one point was saying they were trying to keep a container of orange juice almost 100% orange juice, but a Minute Maid container in a grocery store might be 80% foreign oranges, as opposed to what they were trying to do, still 100% of Florida oranges. So one of the reasons we still have the access to orange juice and orange products that we do is the importation now of oranges from elsewhere. So that is the sum total of the orange knowledge I remember, but it really is fascinating.
It is.
I wonder, have any of you actually been to a Florida orange operation?
Yeah, which we did. Yeah.
No, we did.
Yes.
But it's fascinating just seeing those oranges carted in huge trailers, and then the process of separate. It was really quite an adventure. Getting back to some other questions, and this is a little bit akin to the first question I asked, but what surprised you most in this book? what were you expecting when you picked it up and opened the pages? What surprised you as you read through it? Did you run out and buy some orange juice?
I did. And I bought the Florida Natural.
I did too. I did too. And it made me remember, happy memories of a kid when my mother would squeeze fresh juice for us every morning. A little glass, a little juice glass. And, we had one of those little plastic or metal juicers, nothing electric. Long, long ago, it was just enough. And I hated pulp. So I would say, no pulp, mother, no pulp. Strain juice, please. And my dad used to say, use your teeth.
Well, and I think it's interesting that oranges weren't as they call it, John McFee called a community fruit until the like 1900. That oranges through the centuries had been emperors and kings, and then it came down to the aristocracy. Then it slowly moved down, and it wasn't until about 1900 that oranges really could be just eaten by the everyday person.
Yeah.
And we take it so for granted, I think, that the fruit that's available to us. So I found that very amazing that back, say, in 1775, people just weren't eating oranges. Only the wealthier could afford them.
Some of you have already done this in terms of sharing some orange memories. My biggest memory was from playing sports. And at halftime, our coach would come out with a tray of orange slices, and we would all put them in our mouths, have that funny look of an orange face, or orange mouth, and then get the juice out of the orange, hopefully sustain us through the next half of the sport. And children often will take the orange slice. Do you know what I mean? It's just, they make it with their lips. So, any other orange juice, lemon memories?
Fascinated, and again, others, we really want everybody to chime in, please. I had almost forgotten about the frozen concentrate. Growing up north in the 50s, etc., and even when we got married in 1970, what we drank, Rob and I, it was the frozen concentrate. I can't remember the last time I bought one of those little frozen concentrate things. I think sometimes people now buy them to make cocktails or whatever, but even in Buffalo, where we are in the summer, our Wegmans supermarket now sells in the produce section fresh squeezed orange juice, and it sells out every day. So I was interested to know if people really still use concentrate on a regular basis, or because we're all so lucky to be here, we don't, or again, I had just really forgotten about it and the impact it had on the way we ate, and of course on the industry as well.
Liz, Verney, you want to share what you put in the chat room by unmuting?
Hi, yeah. We always had an orange in the toe of our Christmas stocking for generations. And it was really supposed to be, it was a treasure. I mean, I remember it back in my parents' generation and probably further back.
Us too. And my sister still does that with her children. And her children do it now with the grandchildren, the orange, the toe of the stocking. Yes.
Right, we still do too.
Also here too, toe in the stocking.
Absolutely.
Oranges are smaller now.
Well, I think we can use clementines sometimes too, but I think it started with oranges.
Liz, I thought your comment was Boots who said that the oranges originated in China. That was something you just mentioned as a fact that you liked. You're muted.
Yeah, the disease
Oh,
started. in
that's right.
China.
Sorry, the disease.
The disease started in China, which, understand, what else is coming from China? COVID there, and now we've got a disease in oranges, which have killed 90% of the Florida's crop. California is still hanging in there, but they've spent like 40 million trying to save what they have. Brazil has been fairly successful in Brazil, and I don't know why it hasn't been successful here.
Well, Brazil is now the largest exporter of oranges, beating
Yeah.
us up.
Yeah, but it's interesting that they haven't had, I don't know whether they haven't had or they've just been able to handle the greening.
Yeah, I don't know either. But
Yeah,
it's,
maybe they jumped on it right away, which we didn't. We let it, the man we were speaking with said it was here for over a decade.
Oh, it was. I think I found
Before-
records back to 2009.
Yeah, before people started to take it seriously.
Right.
there isn't a cure, so the tree has to come out of the ground and be destroyed. There's not a spray or anything you can do about it because it's bacterial.
All right.
So it's unfortunate. I will say this, orange juice fell out of favor, maybe a decade or so ago. I'm not certain why, but people just, it wasn't something that you really saw in menus at breakfast time either. But the article I've read said that with this COVID pandemic, people have returned to fresh squeezed juice. And so the demand is up for the natural juice, of course, not concentrate. And, they see it growing, the demand growing because people are using it as a healthy tonic to stay well because it's filled with vitamin C. So that's good news, but we're probably not going to be able to produce enough to satisfy the need suddenly.
I see a bunch of hands. Jim and then Maylee.
Yes.
You want to go? And then Jim, what are you holding up?
This is was purchased at the Punta Gorda Farm Market, and it is Joshua citrus from
What do I
Arcadia,
put in the
Florida,
chat?
and it's fresh squeeze.
Oh, wow, wonderful.
Punta Gorda Farmers Market on Saturdays. We get it every Saturday. Very good.
Good
Jim,
news.
Norley?
I don't know. Can you hear me?
I can
Yeah.
hear you. You've got two. Yes.
Yes.
Jim
Yeah.
Block.
Well, I'm one who is involved in research and all kinds of research. But I have been somewhat amused when I have researched some of the early promotional literature for Florida tourism. A lot of the ads have these bathing beauties, Miss America types, picking oranges in the groves. Some wearing chiffon dresses, some with ball gowns, and some picking oranges in their bathing suits.
Yeah.
And I don't want you to get the wrong idea of what I tend to look at, but it just, I'm somewhat amused and intrigued how much the orange played as included in promotional literature to attract tourists to Florida. And another memory I have is when our family was younger and we would drive down to Florida, we would make sure we would stop at all these orange-related places where you could purchase freshly grown oranges and in bags. And we would load up the car on our way back with these bags of oranges, like as if we could not find oranges back in Illinois. But it brings back fond memories because at these places that sold the oranges, they also had orange ice cream and orange cookies and all kinds of refreshments. So it brings back great memories. And one time, also remember trying to figure out how we should put oranges in our suitcase when we were flying back home.
one time we had to leave them at the airport
Vicky,
because they weren't purchased in the store, they were purchased at a grove. So, but I'm going to go back to my research about the promotional literature though.
very interesting though, Jim.
I was going to ask if any of you have tried to grow oranges here on Boca Grande. Anyway, I've had 2 orange trees that I planted, and both times they haven't done very well. Sometimes the oranges were really mealy or odd, and I was told by Mary Ellen Flanagan that they don't do very well here. I don't know why. Does anybody else have a tree they planted and had success?
Oh, well, I know there are orange trees that grow on the island. The most I have seen are older. Do you live close to the water, Liz?
Yeah, on 19th Street, about 2 houses back from the water.
Might have something to do with it.
Probably just terrible soil too.
I had one, but my trees grew huge. Shade, end of story.
Vicky,
I had everything. Lemons, they all died.
Vicky, you've got your hand up.
I was just wondering, the woman who held up the quart of orange juice, I don't remember who that was. Does it say what kind of oranges?
No, it does not. It doesn't say what kind they are. I wonder if they use different ones.
Yeah, I'm just curious.
It's
where
a
they
little
are.
different.
Yeah.
It's a little different. Just like they say in the book, you know, it can be different every time.
Mm-hmm.
Good though, it's very good. They also sell grapefruit juice and tangerine juice, and they combine orange juice with strawberry. So there's, and it's all fresh out of the back of their truck.
Mm. And this is the farmer's market in Punta Gorda, huh?
On Saturdays, yes. And they're out of Arcadia.
Here's another quote I'd like your reaction to, and it was from someone in the book, and he said, "We're growing chemicals now, not oranges." What was your reaction or understanding of that quote?
Where was it in the book? Who said
Well,
it?
I don't have a page number, but it was after actually several descriptions of treatments that the orange industry was using for oranges, including, I think, how to affect their color.
Yeah,
Well,
Whitty, he was probably more about the color than the greening. But
No.
again, what we saw is to keep an orange tree healthy when there's, you know, greening nearby, they are using a lot more chemicals. They just are.
Robert?
Yeah, I think that was referencing the fact that they use part of the oranges to put out fires. And of course, they use them for scurvy, and then also if you have a blood vessel, they're using that to stop the leakage in a blood vessel. I think that was the reference to the topic there.
Other comments or questions or? Karen? Unmute. You're muted, Karen. Karen, you're muted. Crystal, can you unmute her?
I got it. Now you, you asked quite a ways back about things that surprised you. I thought the interesting thing was that the oranges don't all ripen similarly on the tree. That difference and don't get orange, I guess is what I'm saying when I mean ripen, that only some of the oranges on the tree actually turn orange.
Well,
I
what,
forget whether it's on the south side or the east side or whatever, but it's on one of, it obviously has something to do maybe with the sun.
well, what makes an orange orange anyway? It's cold. It's the cold weather.
Oh,
So the people in Thailand are amazed when they come visit the US and we tell them this is an orange on an orange tree because the oranges they have are green. It never grows, it never gets cold enough in Thailand for an orange. So they have green oranges. Interesting fact. And about that tree ripening, the oranges, the sweetest ones, Karen, are the upper part, south side of the tree. I think that's probably because of the sun, don't you? Don't know. Lots of interesting facts about oranges.
Yeah, Whitney asked if there were any other comments, and I don't know if people want to talk about this. It's been a great discussion about oranges. The book was obviously a treat, a treasure, and fascinating, but it was also so well written, and just the way it starts, to have this journalist who's seeing something in his daily life every day, walking through Grand Central Station, and obviously this machine, whatever, that produced this orange juice, but that he would really notice it and notice how it changed during the course of the year, and then decide that this might make a fascinating look-see and the start of an article. I just found that whole concept really, really interesting, how an author in a way comes to their topic and takes it forward. And this was, as a small book, it was just a wonderful snapshot of that in this case. And to me was just as fascinating as the subject matter itself.
Oh, and he won many awards. He has won over his lifetime because he's written many books. I haven't read any of the other books yet, but I plan to, because his life story is so interesting. But the people that he interviewed and worked with at the station at Lake Alfred were just so fond of him. He stayed, for several weeks, of course, with them, but they all said that his description of their character and their work was so exacting. So they were all very impressed with that fact, and that he made all of them feel really important in their jobs. I found that really interesting too. And he's still teaching at 90. Yay!
I was just agreeing with, I think it was Pam who was talking about the journalistic process and just how interesting it was, and the resources that he had to sit down and do the research, and then to write the articles and then turn it into a book. And I thought that, I thought that was really interesting. And also, I just would say a little tip on I don't know if everyone knows this, but you can unmute yourself using your space bar on the computer. So you can just hit your space bar and that unmutes you if you want to pop in with a little question.
All right, we have Maylee.
Oh, hi, I'm Maylee's husband, Lou. And I think this is on topic, but there is a well-known local author who many of you probably know by the name of Randy Wayne White. And he wrote a book called Seduced. This is the cover of it. And it's all about the search for an original orange tree that came from Spain for the very topic that you're talking about, because we know of the diseases that are adversely impacting the orange groves. And this book was written around the concept that if they could find the original orange tree that was on some isolated island, that they might be able to bring the citrus industry back. Now, obviously, for those of you who know Randy Wayne White, you know that his books are fiction, but they are fact-based in many things, including this orange disease tree issue. So I would only suggest, if you haven't read the book Seduced, it's actually his offshoot, Hannah Smith. But if you haven't read the book Seduced, you should consider going out and getting it. It's a fascinating look at orange trees.
Thank you. I have one more fact that probably many of you already know about, but I was interested. The British Admiralty ordered cases of Lyme so that the soldiers on the ships, wouldn't get scurvy. But that's how they became known as limeys, which is a phrase I've heard, but I never connected it to limes.
That's what they call Lisa Stafford's daughter. Well, do we have anything else we'd like to
Oh,
talk
there's
about?
Marty.
Yeah, this has been a fascinating discussion. Jim's memories kind of brought some thoughts back to my mind. I remember piling with my parents, 7 kids and 2 parents, driving down Highway 41 to get to Miami Beach, maybe once every 10 years. And this must have been in the late 50s. And there was all these orange stands all over the place. And everybody was always wild about getting oranges. And then when rich Uncle Mac would come down to Florida every year, he would always send his other brothers boxes of oranges. And we hated Uncle Mac ever since then, because he could afford to go to Florida all the time and always send the family oranges back. Got a kick out of that whole story, because Florida was quite a place in those times, as not many of you know, but you remember being down here. No expressways. Highway 41 is still there, and it's still the one that comes down here and crosses over into the Everglades over to Miami Beach. The other thing is, somebody mentioned this author who is kind of a cool author. He spent a lot of books and parts of books in the New Yorker a number of years ago, but he wrote a cross-country, went with a cross-country trucker for about, I don't know, 3 or 4 months. And this guy's truck was the most expensive thing on the road. He'd shine it down every night, and just his bantering back and forth with the drivers and what's going on in the truck stops and a lot of other nonsense was really a good book. So as somebody was saying, he's a great writer, and some of those types of books you really can get into and have an enjoyable time riding around the country with him, or whatever his latest thing is that he's doing. So those are just some memories. And Jim, thank you for reminding me. I'm not sure if those oranges ever got up to Berwyn, but they made it to the south side maybe once every 10 years.
Oh, shoot. That's good.
When you talk about orange stands or fruit stands, I have to just remember that in the 70s and 80s, when you would come down 75 from Tampa Airport to come to Boca Grande, you couldn't get off in Northport. You went all the way down to Punta Gorda, then you came across to 41, and then you came north. And at the road that comes out to Boca Grande there, where there is now shopping centers and all kinds of retailers, there was nothing except an All Britain's fruit stand and a flashing light. And I can't tell you how many times we missed the turn and had to go up and turn around and come back. So the fruit stand became the thing you looked for.
Absolutely. Yep.
Jim? You're muted, Jim.
Now,
There you go.
no, and I just wonder, again, my point about how the orange impacted tourism, the promotional literature, and as Marty said, the various stands. When we first started, drive down to Florida, 75 only went to about Tampa. And we had to then connect to 41 and drive the rest of the way down. But how many of us remember the Orange Blossom Express train that came from the north to Miami, the Orange Blossom? And music has been written about the orange and the so it really has. It's kind of the symbol of Florida.
Are you going to sing Orange Blossom now?
No, I have too much respect for my colleagues to do that.
But I was hoping Jim would be able to find, I'm sure he knows right where it is, a picture of this All Britain's fruit stand that Karen just mentioned right off island. That would be fun to connect with this, some visuals, and maybe some of those advertising posters. It might be fun, Pat, to whatever we send, Krista, whatever we send out to follow this, to add some interesting photos. And of course, we all remember Anita Bryant selling orange juice as we were growing up. So,
Yeah, and true. And our license plate, of course, proudly exhibits the orange and blossom. Totally. Well, I think we're getting ready to wrap up our session. We really thank all of you for taking part today. Hope you all enjoyed it as much as we did. I made a promise to myself I'm going to read more of John McFee, certainly an excellent writer. And one more thank you to Ferguson Skipper Law Firm. A special thank you to Jerilyn for choosing this book from our book list. Thanks, Jerilyn. I was a little concerned when I first purchased the book. I thought, now, how's Jerilyn going to make this into a book discussion? But thank you so much. You did an excellent job. And I think everyone enjoyed reading it. I invite you all to join. If you're not a member now, please consider joining our Historical Society. We need each and every one of you. We thank you for being here today and hope you will continue to support us in every way that you can. Please do join, though, if you're not a member. Our next book discussion will be January 16th. We'll be speaking about the book Henry Plant, The Gilded Age Dreams for Florida and the South. And April 5th, we'll be discussing The Devil in the Grove. So we thank you all today and hope to see you again in January.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. Happy
Thank
Thanksgiving.
you.
Very nice.
Thank you. Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.